welcome back everybody to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. We are thrilled to welcome our two guests today. Mohamed Osman coming to us from Spring Impact, along with Alice Metcalf, also with Spring Impact. But more interestingly enough, our two guests today are coming to us from London. Now, for those of you who know, we broadcast from the Western United States. So we're just starting our day with our first cup of coffee. These two warriors have had a long day already, and they're staying up late so that we could have this conversation. So I am full of gratitude that you are doing this, because we're going to be talking about unrestricted funds and scale. It's a huge topic, especially now in the US, the last 4 weeks of a new administration that has caused a tremendous amount of heartburn for many of our nonprofits, and certainly globally. So this could not be more of a timely discussion. Welcome, Mohamed and Alice.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you.
Alice, I'm just delighted that you're going to be joining us as well. And we have a lot of questions for you. One of the things we never question is the loyalty of our presenting sponsors. And they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out so we can have amazing conversations. Again, I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I have assembled this amazing co-host panel. They come from throughout the country. They do various and diverse things within the nonprofit sector, from social service to veterans affairs, fundraising, training, all different things. And they are just a joy to work with. But I'm flying solo today with Mohamed Osman, CEO of Spring Impact, and Alice Metcalf, Managing Consultant at Spring Impact. Okay, Mohamed, this is the elevator pitch. What the heck is Spring Impact, and what all do you do?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. So Spring Impact was born out of frustration. Stay with frustration. In the world where we have so many changing social problems and environmental problems, we don't see the solutions really being scaled up, and we want that to happen. We want to change that. We help mission-driven nonprofits and funders to scale the impact sustainably. We work through consulting, trainings, and we provide support for them to ensure that they can really achieve impact at scale.
It's really an amazing thing. Alice, talk to us about what you do within your leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning, everybody. So in my role, I've been at Spring Impact for 6 years now, and most of that time has been providing direct support to nonprofits globally who are doing really impactful work, doing really amazing things, but aren't reaching as many people as they want to with that solution. So most of my role has been directly providing that support to nonprofits. But over time, and things have evolved, we've really seen a need to be sharing what nonprofits who have scaled have learned with others who are on that journey, which is what brings me here to this session today.
Which is amazing, because I love the name of your organization, because when you have that knowledge and you can get that perspective of a journey, you save so much time, right? I mean, oh my gosh. Talk to us, Mohamed, about where in the world you are working, and do you see a certain part of the world and service sector more than others, or what does it look like?
So we work with more than 700 nonprofits across the world. We work with nonprofits based in the USA. We work with nonprofits in the European Union, the European region, in Africa, in Latin America, and in Asia. We work with nonprofits at different parts of their journey, from very early on their startup phase, when they have a really good solution that has been proven, but also when they are working at scale, we will help them ensure that their impact is sustained at scale. We worked across the board. We have been around for more than 10 years, and we've learned a lot from that work. We've seen trends about what works. We have seen trends about what doesn't work, but truly what we have seen is everybody's committed to the impact. Everybody we work with is very keen to ensure they're able to solve societal problem at scale. And we really want to make sure they do that. We get behind them, we support them, and we hold their hand along the way.
Amazing. I love this work to work with more than 700 organizations that all have their individual issues and cultures and languages and time zones, right? Wow, this is heady stuff. So thank you for sharing that. And I love how it kind of sets the table for our discussion today. The first thing that I want to start with is why unrestricted long-term funding is critical. We're seeing the use, maybe in the last 10 years, more of trust philanthropy. It's a whole new world for many funders and many organizations. Mohamed, talk to us about what this overall structure means.
Absolutely. And I think for us, what we see is that funding and grant making is absolutely a two-way process. The grant maker has to trust the nonprofit to be able to deliver on what they're trying to achieve. The nonprofit has to trust the grant maker is going to be there for them, support them to achieve the impact. So we believe that without trust, very little can be done. And we believe that many funders often trust the nonprofit because they know they're in the right place, the right time, doing the right things. And often what they miss the most is income, is funding. Because they have great ideas, but might not have all the money they need to achieve the impact. But what we found out from this study, and my colleague is going to share a little bit more, is that when a nonprofit has a trusted relationship and a flexible funding, they're able to take risks. They're able to try things out, and they're able to find the right solutions that allow them to implement. When the funding is not unrestricted, it really stifles innovation, it stifles growth, and it undermines impact. So we really encourage our partner funders to ensure that be open about this, be open to different suggestions. As long as the problem is the same, the solution might change in a way.
So, Alice, I got to ask this question of you. How often do you find yourself trying to explain this concept to funders? And when you talk about this, are they like, whoa, I didn't know? I mean, because what Mohamed just brought up is pretty heady. I mean, it's for a lot of organizations, this is going to be a new concept. A lot of funders, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, this is a conversation that we're often having at Spring Impact with many funders. And to be honest, one thing we learned when we started having these conversations with funders, that actually we were surprised how many funders do know, like on paper, long-term unrestricted funding is important, is needed. But they're really kind of struggling to find ways to prioritize that in the way that they give grants. So most funders that we find are, to be honest, not that willing to take risks. So what we've tried to do with the study that we've created is really looked at 4 organizations who are creating impressive impact at scale and changing lives at scale. What are the funding mechanisms that have enabled them to get there? And surprise, surprise, long-term flexible funding is usually what's enabled them to get there. So we're using the kind of examples of nonprofits who have done this to be able to demonstrate that actually that kind of funding, long-term unrestricted funding, is what's needed to create impact at scale. And I think for funders, I would love funders to think about, what's the impact that I can create by providing short-term restricted funding? Am I really willing to invest in a way that might create transformative impact at scale, which might feel more risky? Or am I willing to accept that actually short-term restricted funding will only create that incremental impact? So it's really for funders to think about how to prioritize this and how much they really want to be creating transformative impact at scale.
So, Mohamed, I keep thinking about through the start of our conversation that so much of this, like in a marriage, in your daily life, your religious life, trust is about relationships. How do you do this maybe with somebody who you've never worked with before? And can you get out the gate with this structure, or is this something that you morph into, or when everybody gets more comfortable? Because this is a big step for a lot of funders. And I would say nonprofits and NGOs too, right? It's a two-way street.
It is. And it takes time, like in every relationship, it takes time to build trust. I think what is important in this sort of trust building journey is to have a shared value.
Okay.
Have a shared value, a shared understanding about what is the direction of travel, where are we trying to get to, how can we get there, and what's important to us. Because as long as we're clear about what's important, the rest will fit into place. And we encourage our partners, our nonprofit partners, our funders, to really be sort of aligned and be open as much as they can, be transparent around what is possible, what they're trying to achieve, and where they're going to go. So trust for us equals values equals impact. So when trust is established and there's a shared value, then there's a shared agreement about the impact. There's a shared understanding about the impact, and this trust goes across the way. It goes with the funders, it goes with the nonprofit, but most importantly, it goes with the constituents who are receiving the services. They have to trust that the interventions are well thought through, that they are going to be there for the long term, and that the right interventions for their solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way for everybody to understand it. And I would to go back to Alice. Alice, you mentioned some research that you all have been doing, and I'd love to kind of get into that a little bit more, and specifically how this is impacting this philosophy, our donors, our relationships, and then that funding diversification, because that's a big piece of this as well. I mean, that old adage about putting all of our eggs in one basket and then you drop the basket and you have disaster. How is this synergy all working, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the study that we touched on. So we wanted to better understand how organizations who are creating impact at scale have access to funding to enable them to do that. Because we know through our work, I'm sure most nonprofits know that accessing funding is really the main barrier that organizations face in creating impact at scale. So we collated a database of 100 nonprofits who are creating impact at scale, and then interviewed 28 of those across different countries and issue areas, and spent a lot of time analyzing their financial models, budgets, and funding sources to really answer that question of like, where is this funding coming from? And one of the things that I think is really essential for everyone to know that came out of this is that philanthropy plays a really ongoing role in supporting nonprofits to create impact at scale. I find so many funders are hoping and are excited to invest in kind of early stage, new, exciting innovations, and then hope that once nonprofits have found a home for that solution, whether that's within government systems, whether that's within other partners, that actually the philanthropy is not needed anymore and they can exit their funding. But actually, we found that philanthropy is critical at every stage of those nonprofits' journey. And of those 28 organizations that we spoke to, who are all operating at really impressive levels of scale, all of them are still reliant on philanthropy. And philanthropy actually made up 68% on average of their kind of overall budgets. So that's kind of one of the main messages is philanthropy, just this idea that you can really exit is not going to be what's going to create impact at scale.
Right.
And on the diversification point, yes, so that was one thing that was really interesting in the study. We set out to speak to organizations to know what are the financial models which are working, like who's cracked it, who's got a model which is sustainable, and can they tell us what that model is? But actually, almost no organization considered their model to be financially sustainable, not because of this ongoing reliance on philanthropy, but also because they've got a model which is working for now, but all funding sources are fickle. Funding sources can easily and do dry up. So nonprofit leaders are kind of constantly navigating challenges and finding new funding sources. So really that looking and understanding what are the trade-offs associated with accessing different types of funding and what are the best options for us. But really it's about being nimble and agile and kind of not expecting to get to a point where we can kind of sit and rest and think actually our model is sustainable now because things are always changing.
You know, Mohamed, this is interesting. To me, when I listen to Alice, I'm thinking that in so many ways, this is a leadership mindset. And that leader, C-suite, board, group, whatever, that's like, if we just get this check in, all our problems would be solved. We can take a deep breath. And, you know, as I enter the 6th decade of my life, I realize that's just not true. You know, to Alice's point, it's always something that we need to be thinking about and looking. I mean, my God, look at this country in the last 3 or 4 weeks and all of the drama and duress under some decisions that have been made and rescinded and made and rescinded, just amplifies this need to be in the game and not thinking that things will be okay. Do you see that? Or how do we protect ourselves, maybe, is a better question.
I think what we saw in the report, which was quite interesting, is that some of the most successful nonprofits have been able to find a way to convert their services into a user fee, whereby the people who are using the service are able to contribute to the service upkeep and delivery. And it doesn't have to be a significant amount of money. It's sort of affordable, small amount of money, which ensure that the foundation of the service is maintained, and it doesn't often rely on funding from outside. So that level of diversification allows the nonprofits to have a secured source of funding that keeps the base going, but also then they can fundraise for the innovations, they can fundraise for the things which are difficult to deliver. But within time, as the community benefit from the service, they will start seeing the income grow, and that they will have enough resources to be able to deliver the work. Eventually, in partnership with the government, so other statutory factors who are in those places. So we encourage our partners to say, don't just wait for the check. If you get the check, think about how can you bring other resources to yourself to ensure that you deliver the work more effectively.
Yeah, I love your approach, and I think too, one of the things that I see, and this is kind of an aside, is that we suffer from such tremendous burnout, and it seems like this is the talent and the leadership issue is a vacuum. And when we don't protect our leadership and our organizations from the stress, it's easy to see these people go, right? Because they literally are burned out. I mean, I hear it all the time. I'm sure you all do as well. It seems to me like this approach could be another benefit could be that we keep our teams healthier and, staying in the game, because it's tough work on top of all this, right? Mission delivery is tough work.
It is, and it's tough work in an environment that have fewer and fewer options for funding.
Yeah.
So to keep the lights on, to deliver impact at scale, and to ensure that your team is motivated, it is a tough job, and many leaders feel lonely in that space.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to ensure that we can create opportunities for leaders to share best experience, and that's part of what we're doing. What's kind of to share what have we learned. We've spoken to some of the best in the world, and they have told us what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, where they struggled. And like, don't discover the wheel again. Look at this and say, how could you tap into this knowledge?
Right. No, I love that. I think that is brilliant. And we don't do enough of that across the board. And I agree with you that loneliness and isolation of leadership is sometimes really tough to get beyond. And then I also think it's tough to be creative. When you're working in fear, your creativity goes out the window, right? And your boldness and your ability to make new decisions or, lean in on something, it gets tamped down because working from fear is not a good thing to do. Let's segue a little bit into embedded solutions that absorb delivery costs. This is one of my favorite topics when I talk with leaders. What does this mean to you? And Alice, I'm going to have you start this conversation off. What does this look like to you?
Sure. So this is where we see nonprofits who want to take a solution to scale, instead of starting by thinking, how can we scale up to deliver this solution in everywhere that we want it and we need it, but really instead thinking about who already has access to our target group, who already has the infrastructure that can scale this up, and how can we work with them to really embed this within those systems. So through our study, we've seen this across different systems, so that's health systems, education systems, transport systems, other nonprofits, delivery systems. And we see this as a really effective way of not just reducing that overall cost. So, it's a way to find a way of scaling up without increasing your organization's resource so much, but also really increasing those chances of sustainability. If you've managed to embed your program within government health systems and education systems, it's got more chance, still never guaranteed,
Right.
of in the long run.
Right. Mohamed, in this changing climate and the change of how we work with NGOs, nonprofits, leadership, is this a concept that's easy to sell or easy to understand? Because to me, there's a difference between searching for a quick fix and looking out your office window and seeing a problem versus taking a deep breath and saying, I got to wait or pull back until I can make this, a longer term issue. That's a tough thing. Do I get the money now, or do I try and wait and be whole? It's really hard.
It is hard. It is hard if you spend a lot of your time in your solution. But if you zoom out a bit and look at the systems that you're trying to operate within, you will see that the solution you're trying to achieve does add to other people's solution, eventually to solve the problem. So we normally encourage our partners to think broadly, to think outside of their initial influence, and see, I'll give an example. If you're helping someone go to school and get better outcomes, is how do you work with someone who's ensuring the school itself has better teaching supplies, it has better resources, and how could you all align yourself so at the end of the day, the young person who's at school has a good result, has a good experience, and they're able to help the society thrive. So we normally say, like, look around yourself and see who else is trying to achieve similar goals, who else is trying to achieve similar impact. It could be focusing on a different part of their solution, but if you look at the problem you're trying to solve, we will all find alignment eventually.
Mm-hmm. Alice, how do you, going back to your research and in your study, how do you, or can you, take this knowledge and arm somebody that's working in Southeast Asia versus South America versus, I don't know, somewhere in Europe, right? Like, how do you take this swirl of information and then make it work, as we mentioned, with different cultures, different languages, different time zones, and different habits? Like, what does that look like to you?
Yeah.
And does it translate? Maybe that's the question. Does this translate?
Yeah, we have found that it does, and that was something we were very conscious of doing this study, of course, looking across so many different sectors and so many different geographies. And we found so many of the challenges that nonprofits face are the same. And just go back to your point of, embedding your solution within other systems, it does take a really long time. And we found that across all different geographies, when an organization is really committed to building a solution within government systems, it's not something that's easy to hand over. And all of these organizations have found that they're handing the solution over, but actually investing a lot of ongoing time in building the capacity of those governments, building the government infrastructure to be able to do that. And those lessons and those themes really, really seem to translate. And I think there are a few key messages which I think are really applicable to all nonprofits who are thinking about scaling. The first is the point that we've talked about around the importance of diversifying your income. The second is the importance of being agile. And as you said, that requires space to do that, to test, to learn, to fail, and to learn from those failures, which is important in whichever sector you're working in. And then building your evidence base and demonstrating cost effectiveness, we've seen as really being the key to a lot of these organizations unlocking kind of bigger funding. And they seem to translate across all geographies, across all sectors, which is probably unsurprising to the audience who are thinking, actually, that resonates with us too.
Honestly, it gives me hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I think sometimes we think in thought leadership, oh, well, my way is the only way and my way is the right way. And we don't reach out and say, okay, how do we work together and still understand some difference? And it's very, very interesting. I'm absolutely mesmerized by your work and all the different things that you do. And I'm so appreciative that you would come forward and introduce yourselves and let us know what you're working on. This is a time of great change from our country here in the US, globally, a time of great change. I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball, shine it up, and talk to us a little bit in our remaining moments about what do you see as the future? What do you see? Have things pivoted for you, or is it stay the course? What are you wrestling with, given that you have a much bigger perspective than most of us will ever have because you work on such a large scale? Mohamed, I'm going to throw this to you first. And there's no right or wrong answer. I guess it's just me and my curiosity wondering.
No, thank you. We're also curious as you are. And I think there's a few things which are coming out for us at the moment. One is the whole advancement in artificial intelligence, where the computer learning world has really evolved, and we're seeing how could we tap into this new resource to ensure that we have a better understanding of the problems of the world, we have a better understanding of the solutions, we have a better understanding of evidence. So the whole AI world has allowed us to to even quicker, get to where we could have got to through the old traditional methods of understanding solutions. The other thing we are seeing is that in spite of what everyone is hearing, there's huge amount of optimism and hope in the communities we meet, and that people really want to find a way to thrive, and they want their people to do well. And what we're seeing is that there's an incredible connectivity happening around the world, where people sort of share solutions and ideas. And finally, what we're saying is that people are actually falling in love with their problems and trying to make sure they can solve them right now. So they're impatient about how to get to the end of that problem as well.
Wow. Talk about mindset. That's going to be my new, I'm going to steal that line. Fall in love with your problems.
Yeah.
Wow. That's magical thinking to me, because fear just is so corrosive. And if you can, wow, okay, like, show's over. That was my learning point for the day. Oh, Alice, I'm so sorry to throw this question to you now, because it puts you on the hot seat. But what are you seeing for the future, and to amplify or, be diverse from what Mohamed says? Where do you see things going?
Yeah, and obviously at the moment, in the current times, we're seeing a kind of trend in the reduction of institutional funding. And what I see similar to Mohamed is like optimism and hope, and the changes that I would like to see, and already starting to see the kind of green shoots of that, are philanthropic funders, foundations, really thinking about how do they step into that space, and what is their role. So more conversations around unrestricted long-term funding is what I'm seeing in my crystal ball. And similarly, where kind of automatically that reduction in funding that's available might risk there being kind of competition between nonprofits. I'm hopeful that that's going to kind of foster an environment where actually collaboration comes before competition. So maybe seeing new ways that nonprofits can really creatively partner together to address problems at scale, because we see already that no organization can achieve that alone. So it's creating kind of new environment where collaboration hopefully will become the norm. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's incredible wisdom. I can tell you, to bump to that, I'm seeing so many funders laying out there that, we'll fund this XYZ project, but 2 or 3 people groups have to come together, and they're forcing collaboration, which it can sometimes be a little sticky, because sometimes, to your point, Alice, these organizations kind of compete for the, as we say, the cheese, right? And it's like, who's stealing my money? Who's stealing my cheese? And so I like what you said. I think that's a good way to look forward, to be more present with the opportunities, right? If you can collaborate, doesn't mean you can't work together or work separately, but it's a different mindset. Well, the two of you, I have so enjoyed this. It's hard to believe our time is up. It's been really a lot of fun to keep you up late into the evening in London time. I so appreciate that. I truly, truly do. I realize now you're trying to end your days. Mohamed, I think you're at the office, and I can see some of your coworkers heading home throughout this conversation. So Mohamed Osman, CEO of Spring Impact, Alice Metcalf, one of the managing consultants, Spring Impact. Check out springimpact.org, and you will learn some amazing information that really, wow, I think sometimes we're just in our own little communities, in our own little world. To learn about your work and what you're doing is just an education. It really, I thought it was incredibly profound to see, how far you reach and what folks are doing. I love the wisdom of both of you, and I do hope you come back and share with us again, because I think we can all learn from this. As Mohamed said, zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, it never fails us to give us more options. So this has really been a joy. Everybody, I hope that you get to share this episode with folks that you work with, whether you're working in a small rural village somewhere in Asia or in your own middle America town. I think some of the wisdom shared today has been really profound. One of the things that's very profound for us here at the Nonprofit Show are our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday. These are our new episodes on Fridays, just dedicated to those who are professional fundraisers. It's a great episode segment, and so be sure and check that out. Of course, we have our partners at Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. Okay, my new best friends from across the pond. Each and every episode, we end with this mantra of sorts. We've been saying it since day one, and it means a lot of different things to me. And today I hear it in a different way. And it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone.